When Ellen DeGeneres smirked and called Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett feisty, she had no idea the icy silence that would follow, or how one response would shatter the illusion of polite TV forever. The email hit Talia's inbox like a grenade, with a smiley face attached. Ellen's team wanted Jasmine Crockett on the show, and the timing couldn't have been more suspicious. The email hit like a kiss wrapped around a slap. The Ellen DeGeneres show wants Jasmine Crockett. No context, no agenda, just a neatly packaged invitation to sit and smile for Middle America. Talia knew better. "They're setting a stage," she muttered, holding her phone like it might bite. Jasmine just watched her, unmoved. She had seen too many arenas dressed as living rooms, courtrooms, hearings, cameras pretending to be mirrors. This wasn't hospitality. This was theater. And the black woman always got the punchline. Backstage smelled like lavender and lies. Jasmine sat in a chair too soft to trust, tracing the rim of her water bottle like a trigger. Talia paced, her heels marking time against the studio floor. "You know they'll want the strong black woman moment," she hissed. "Not your mind, just your fire." Jasmine didn't blink. She'd spent her life swallowing rooms whole, men who talked over her, networks who cut her words mid-breath. If Ellen wanted to play cute, Jasmine was ready to burn the script. The warm-up act's laughter bled through the walls. Then came the knock. A headset-wearing assistant chirped, "2 minutes, Congresswoman," as if she were announcing a magic trick. Jasmine stood slowly. Her suit was deep blue, power without apology. Talia adjusted her collar. "Smile, but don't." "Shrink," she whispered. Jasmine replied without looking. "I don't do half-truths." Ellen's stage was a sunlit lie. The lights, the applause, the choreographed joy. It all clashed against Jasmine's stillness. The interview started safe. "How's Texas? What's your routine?" But Jasmine's eyes never softened. She wasn't here to charm. Then Ellen leaned in, that infamous grin sharpening like a knife. "So?" "That moment in Congress," she said, and the viral clip rolled. Jasmine tearing through a smug committee member like silk through scissors. The audience giggled. Ellen chuckled. "You've got attitude. I love it." The pause that followed wasn't hesitation. It was calculation. Jasmine tilted her head slightly, the way you study a storm before it hits. "Funny," she said, voice velvet over steel. "When a man says it, he's assertive. When I do." She let the silence. "Answer. It's attitude." The audience exhaled too late. Ellen's grin faltered. A tremor ran through the air. Talia stopped breathing. In a single sentence, Jasmine hadn't just broken the moment, she'd broken the mirror they were trying to force her into. Backstage felt colder now, like the laughter had sucked all the warmth from the building. Talia's phone buzzed nonstop, screen lit with messages. "Did she just correct Ellen on live TV? Bro, is she okay? This is gonna go viral." Jasmine stared at the blank wall in front of her, unmoved. She wasn't surprised. What surprised her was how calm she felt. Not proud, not afraid, just aligned. Like she'd finally stopped shrinking to fit a room that never deserved her. Online, the storm had already begun. 1,000 versions of her face flashed across social media, screenshots mid-sentence, captions like "Queen energy, too aggressive. Why is she always so mad?" But the comments weren't just white noise. They were arrows. Some praised her grace. Others dissected her tone like it was a weapon. One trending tweet read, "Why do black women always make everything so political?" And beneath it a reply with 10,000 likes, "Because everything already is." Meanwhile, the studio was unraveling. Ellen's team huddled in corners, whispering damage control strategies. One producer passed Talia a tight-lipped smile. Maybe she could clarify? Say it was a misunderstanding? Talia didn't respond, She simply stepped in front of Jasmine like a bodyguard made of principle. Jasmine looked at her, half amused. "They want soft now," she murmured, "now that I didn't play pet." Back home, the news clips were already playing. Cable anchors debated whether the moment was uncomfortable or empowering. White pundits discussed Jasmine's tone like it was foreign policy. One anchor called it an ambush. Another called her brave. Jasmine watched silently from her hotel room, legs crossed, the remote untouched beside her. She didn't need to hear them define her. She already knew who she was. But what haunted her wasn't their noise. It was the silence from people she thought would speak. That night, Jasmine lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as if it owed her answers. She thought of her grandmother, who once said, "Silence is, how they tame you. And praise? That's just a prettier muzzle." Jasmine didn't come to be tamed. Not by applause, not by television, not by the myths they wrap around powerful black women to make them digestible. She closed her eyes, not in retreat, but in preparation. The morning after, the sunlight crept into the room like it didn't want to wake her. Jasmine sat upright in bed, phone in hand, watching the same clip on a loop. Her voice, measured, precise, cut through the studio air like truth itself. But the real sound wasn't her voice. It was the silence that had followed. It played back over, and each time it echoed louder, not awkward, not accidental. It was the kind of silence that marked the moment the ground shifts beneath history's feet. Talia barged into the room mid-loop, her face a battlefield of worry and pride. "We have MSNBC, CNN, even The View calling," she said, tossing a notepad onto the bed. "Some want interviews, others want apologies." Jasmine didn't even blink. "What about my colleagues?" she asked quietly. Talia paused. A few liked a tweet. Privately, one reposted a picture with no caption. Jasmine gave a dry laugh. "Cowards in custom suits." She looked back, at her phone, where thousands of girls were stitching her clip with their own tears, their own stories. But the people? They're ready. By noon, her inbox was split in two, offers and threats. A staffer from Ellen's show had sent a carefully worded statement suggesting they mutually clarify the misunderstanding. The email called her response bold but potentially misinterpreted and asked if she would consider issuing a statement reaffirming her respect for Ellen's legacy. Jasmine read it twice, then whispered to herself, "Legacy isn't built on silence." She declined with one sentence. "Respect isn't owed to comfort, it's owed to truth." Then came the call from the House floor. Congressman Greer, an aging centrist who smiled like he was born behind a podium, requested a friendly conversation. Jasmine met him in a quiet corner of the Capitol. "Jasmine," he began, using her first name like a leash. "You're young. You're brilliant. But you have to understand the cost of candor. There are ways to be heard without burning bridges." Jasmine leaned in. "Then maybe the bridge shouldn't have been built over me." His smile faded. She walked away. That evening, Jasmine did something radical. She opened Instagram Live. No makeup team, no script, no press handlers. Just her, in a hoodie, seated on the edge of her hotel bed. "I wasn't raised to make people comfortable," she began. "I was raised to speak when silence becomes complicity." Her voice didn't shake, not once. "This isn't about Ellen. It's about how many of us were taught to laugh off disrespect, to smile through microaggressions, to soften our truth for the sake of decorum. I'm done with that." In the comments, hearts and fire emojis flooded the screen. But it was one message that pierced her. "I've never seen someone look like me be that unapologetic." "You gave me permission." And in that moment, Jasmine realized this wasn't just a TV moment anymore. It wasn't about a talk show. It was about a rupture, a revelation. She hadn't just disrupted a script. She'd broken a cycle. And now, There was no turning back. By the next morning, Jasmine Crockett wasn't just a congresswoman anymore. She was a litmus test. News segments split her face into opposing narratives. To some, she was a hero dismantling the old order. To others, a disruptive figure poisoning civility. Hashtags trended like storms. Our Crockett clapback, how too real for TV, and the more venomous, her angry black woman. She had become a symbol, whether she liked it or not. Back in D.C., her office felt colder. Colleagues who once greeted her with practiced smiles now avoided eye contact. One staffer overheard someone whisper in a hallway, "She went too far. You don't make enemies with Ellen." Jasmine stood at her window, watching the Capitol's dome glisten under a sharp spring sun. "Funny," she murmured. "How telling. The truth gets you labeled as dangerous." Talia stepped beside her, holding a printout. "You should see this," she said. Jasmine scanned the page. A letter signed by over 100 black women in politics, education, and activism, standing with her. They're calling it the Silence Breakers. Jasmine's throat tightened. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to exhale. But the backlash had teeth. Corporate donors began to withdraw pledges. Invitations to bipartisan panels disappeared. One prominent senator hinted in an interview that Crockett lacked the temperament for leadership. The comment hit Jasmine harder than expected. That night, she sat in her apartment alone, scrolling through the smear pieces and op-eds. Her phone buzzed. Her mother. Jasmine hesitated before answering. "Baby," her mother said, voice soft. "Do you know how proud your granddaddy would be? You didn't raise your voice. You raised the bar." The following week, Jasmine was invited to speak at a community town hall in Houston. The auditorium was packed. Young girls with notebooks, old men in church hats, mothers holding babies. When she took the stage, there was no roar, just a standing silence. Reverent, full. She spoke not about politics, but about perception. We are expected to shrink to be digestible, to smile to be safe. But every time we dilute ourselves to fit a script, we tell the next girl that her truth is too much. Her voice trembled only once. "If that's the cost of being likable, I'll take being whole instead." By the time she stepped off stage, the silence wasn't just broken, it had become a drumbeat. People weren't just clapping, they were chanting, "Whole, whole, whole." That night, Jasmine sat with Talia on the hotel balcony, both wrapped in blankets, both still processing. "You didn't just survive the fire," Talia said. "You are the fire." Weeks passed, but Jasmine's words on Ellen's stage refused to fade. University lecture halls played the clip in classes on media bias. Churches quoted her in sermons about dignity and voice. Even corporate diversity trainings, those usually sanitized beyond meaning, began to reference her moment as a case study in coded language and structural disrespect. A wave was forming, and Jasmine found herself riding it, whether or not she had asked for the surfboard. She was invited to speak at Yale, then Spelman, then Harvard Law. Each crowd different, yet all asking the same thing in 100 ways. How did you stay so composed? How do we follow you without burning out? Jasmine never gave the same answer twice. Sometimes she said courage. Sometimes she said exhaustion. And once, in a small round table with teenage girls in Memphis, she said, "Because I was tired of shrinking to fit someone else's comfort zone. I'd rather be too much than disappear." The room went silent, not from awkwardness but reverence. For the first time, she wasn't just defending herself. She was handing others the language to defend their own fire. But the more her public self glowed, the more her private world flickered. Late-night calls to her sister went unanswered. Her college best friend texted, "You're everywhere, but it feels like you're nowhere." Jasmine stared at the screen for hours before replying, then didn't. She'd always told herself that impact came with isolation, but now the solitude wasn't noble. It was lonely. One evening, she walked into her apartment and stood in the dark for a full 10 minutes, coat still on, keys in hand, no speeches, no cameras, just silence. For the first time, she wondered if the price of being heard was losing the people who once knew her when no one else did. Talia noticed the cracks. One morning, she found Jasmine staring blankly at a blank page. Her speech for an upcoming summit in D.C. was overdue. "You okay?" she asked softly. Jasmine didn't respond. Instead, she whispered, "I'm afraid I'm becoming a symbol to everyone, and a stranger to myself." Talia sat down, took her hand. "Then let's find you again. Not the speaker, not the Congresswoman, just Jasmine. Start there." That night, Jasmine journaled for the first time in months. No headlines, no hashtags. Just raw sentences like wounds. "I miss laughing without checking if it's strategic. I miss calling my sister without feeling like I'm interrupting her life with my noise. And finally, I don't want to become what I'm fighting against, a polished image with no soul behind the eyes." The fire still burned, but she was learning, finally, to keep a little warmth for herself. Jasmine stood before the mirror, not to check her hair or outfit, but to see if she still recognized the woman in the reflection. The suit was sharp, the makeup flawless, but something behind her eyes looked tired. Not physically, but spiritually. She had become something, bigger than herself, a walking idea, a movement with a face. And people didn't want Jasmine Crockett anymore. They wanted the moment. Replayed, repackaged, repeated. But she wasn't a moment. She was a person, damn it. And she was slipping through her own fingers. At the DC summit, she delivered the keynote everyone had been waiting for. But this time, her voice wasn't a blade. It was a mirror. "We say we want truth," she told the crowd of power brokers and activists. "But we only applaud it when it's convenient. I'm applauded now, but where was that applause when I stood alone?" The room went quiet. Even the live translator paused. "I'm not your performance," she added. "And I'm not here to be palatable. I'm here to be whole." The applause came late, not out of disrespect, but realization. The icon had just reminded them she was human. Backstage, a young woman named Simi approached her. She was shaking. "I work for a senator who mocked your Ellen interview," she confessed. "But I watched it anyway. And now I'm writing legislation to protect young black girls in schools from being labeled aggressive for speaking up." Jasmine blinked, not because she was surprised, but because this right here, was what made it worth it. Not trending, not speeches. This girl, this quiet seed of change. That was the victory. But the duality of it all was wearing her down. The constant code switching, expectation managing, energy-draining calculus of existing in rooms not built for you. She found herself in therapy for the first time, sitting on a couch too soft, with a woman too kind, asking questions too deep. "When did you stop letting people hold you?" the therapist asked. Jasmine laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Maybe when I realized they only reached for me when I was on fire." Still, something was shifting. In herself, in others. At a school in Milwaukee, a girl named Aisha had written an essay titled, "I don't want to be liked, just heard," inspired by Jasmine's interview. At a dinner in Brooklyn, a retired judge quoted Jasmine to challenge a colleague's bias. And at home, Jasmine finally called her sister. "I miss you," she said. Her sister paused. "Then come visit," she said simply. "Don't bring the speeches, just bring you." It was a rainy Thursday in Houston when Jasmine walked into her old community center unannounced. No press, no staff. Just her, a denim jacket, and a paper bag of coffee and donuts. The room hadn't changed much. Peeling, Posters, folding chairs, the hum of a busted vending machine. But the way people looked at her had. It wasn't fame in their eyes, it was reverence. That scared her more. She wasn't a prophet. She was a woman who once cried herself to sleep in that very building after being told she was too much for student council. She sat in the back, while a group of high schoolers led a discussion about identity. One girl, no older than 16, spoke with a fire Jasmine knew too well. "They tell me I'm angry," she said, "but I'm not. I'm just done pretending to be small." The room clapped. Jasmine didn't. She wiped away a tear instead. It wasn't sorrow. It was gratitude. These kids weren't mimicking her. They were evolving her message. And that meant she had done enough. Back in D.C., a televised hearing on education funding began. Jasmine's seat was empty. Her absence spoke louder than any prepared remark. Commentators speculated. Twitter spiraled. But those who knew, knew. She had chosen peace over performance for now. Her office released a short statement. Congresswoman Crockett is where change begins. In the community, not the cameras. And just like that, silence became her loudest act yet. That night, Jasmine stood on her sister's porch, barefoot, holding a glass of wine. Her niece ran out to hug her, giggling, "You're famous!" Jasmine laughed, this time for real. "I'm just Auntie Jazz," she said. Inside, they watched a movie, ate popcorn, and no one mentioned politics. It felt revolutionary, being allowed to simply be. In the months that followed, Jasmine returned to Congress. But something was different. She no longer tried to fit the frame. She shattered it gently every day. And in doing so, she gave others permission to speak up, take space, and stay whole. She had turned a moment on a talk show into a lifelong movement. Not by screaming, but by standing. Not by pleasing, but by persevering. Have you ever realized that the loudest thing you can do is be yourself in a world begging you to shrink? Drop your thoughts below. Your voice matters.